Hello? Hello, 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 hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Because of circumstances, our work will be slightly different in nature. I had hoped to be here a few days earlier and to have the nature of the closed class and the practitioner class so well understood that no questions could arise. But we will have to extemporize now, and let me begin by telling you that all of the infinite way teaching work has been given to us under guidance. Nobody has made up a rule of how the teaching should be conducted, nor have we followed the pattern of any metaphysical or spiritual or religious group that I've ever heard of. From the first moment of teaching, different unfoldments were given to me and explanations given to me of how to conduct it, and we have been following that pattern as closely as possible, sometimes without offending students and very often with offending them very grievously. And the reason is this: a spiritual teaching cannot be given according to the way you or I would like it to be given. It cannot follow a pattern of satisfying human beings. A spiritual teaching has to be given in accord with the instructions laid down, and we who receive them have to abide by them, and in many cases we do not like that way. Now, it was through this that our original work began with closed classes. Why a closed class? To bar out as many people as could be barred out. Seems very strange, doesn't it? But that has been our object from the beginning, to see how many people could be kept from going through class. That doesn't mean that the infinite way teaching is exclusive. It's open to everybody that wants to put in the effort to acquire it. But by the time one gets to a class, one should be ready to lay down their personal ideas of truth for the instruction of the Spirit. And so, while welcoming all to the books, to the tape recordings, to lectures, the classes very definitely have been so conducted as to attract as few as possible. And those few who could not be kept from seeking truth. Now the practitioner groups that formed went a step further. And the first rule of the practitioner group was that those who could attend were those who had previously been through a closed class and had had sufficient time since the closed class to put the principles into operation. Now from that point on, the nature of the teaching changed again. From then on, individuals were selected for further teaching in accordance with the progress that they showed in healing work. So that we have gone from step to step, step to step. Some students have been through 10 classes, 20 classes, 30 classes. Some students have been with me for 5 years, 6 hours a day. And some have found it very difficult to get a 5-minute appointment. Why? Well, some of the students say I have pets. I have. And we will admit that right now. And the finer healing work you do, the greater pet you're going to be of mine. And the less healing work you do, the further on the outside you're going to be. Why? Is it personal? No. It isn't personal. It has nothing to do with me as a person. I died in 1928, in the end of 1928, and from that minute on I have had no personal life, no personal family, no personal friends, no personal acquaintances ever visit my home, nor do I ever visit the home of anybody. My life finished. The infinite way life began, first in Christian Science and then in the infinite way itself. But even in my Christian Science days, no person can ever say that in 16 years they visited me socially or that I visited them socially. No. This life has been a death of a human and the rebirth of a spiritual ideal. Now, for that reason, those who come to this work are cautioned by Paul to die daily, that they may be reborn of the Spirit. The Master isn't quite as gentle as Paul. He has harsher words for it. He says, leave your nets. Leave your own way of life to follow me. Leave your mother and your father and your sister and your brother and your husband and your wife. He says, sell all that you have in order to buy this pearl. Now, you can see that with radical teachings like that as our foundation, that they're not always popular with those who are seeking an easy way of going through life. Now, I haven't found an easy way of going through life. I found a pleasant way, a happy way, a way of service. But it isn't what you'd call by any manner of means an easy way. And it is for this reason that when you hear the tapes, and you hear me caution students over and over again, please don't go into spiritual work. Please don't go into the practice. Please don't begin spiritual work. Please don't have a desire to teach or to heal. You'll understand what I mean. Because to embark on a work like this and believe for a minute that it's a pastime, or that it can be indulged with one's spare time or with one's spare change, is a very, very sad way of looking on a way of life that the Master called straight and narrow and said that only a few could enter. Now, it is as true today as it ever was that this way is straight and narrow and few only can enter. The reason that few only can enter is that the few must forsake their own concepts of truth, their own ways of life, their own personal indulgences, and subject themselves to the schoolmaster, the teacher, the disciplinarian, the divine presence that keeps us in a straight and narrow path and rebukes us every time we stray from that path. Now, for us in the infinite way, it is a little more difficult than for others. For this reason, there is an emptying out process before there can be a taking in process. In other words, if you have still with you concepts of Orthodox religion, they are going to be such a hindrance to your progress that you may almost make up your mind that you will not make progress. Any remnants of orthodoxy, of Orthodox religion left in us must be a barrier to spiritual unfoldment. Number two, there are several forms of metaphysical work, and I will not designate any of them as right or wrong. I will designate all of them as differing from each other. And there are those of us who are constituted to follow one form, others constituted to follow another form. For instance, there is the mental sciences. Any of them, any of the truth teachings that come under mental sciences. How do you know to designate the mental sciences? To begin with, they have a mental cause for a physical effect. Or they work from the standpoint that truth overcomes error, or love overcomes hate. In other words, they have two powers. Also, they work from the standpoint that thought is power. Now, a mental science may always be recognized by that point that it recognizes thought as a power, and of course it says that good thinking is better than bad thinking, right thinking is better than wrong thinking, constructive thinking is better than destructive thinking, but the emphasis, you see, is on thinking. Now, thinking is a very human thing. God never thinks. So any teaching that deals with thought is not in the realm of God, but in the realm of man. Therefore, it is a science of thought, or it is a science of mind, or it is a science of right thinking, or a science of constructive thinking, but it has nothing to do, and no relationship, to the absolute spirit, that which is above all thought, that which does not deal either with right thinking or wrong thinking, that which does not use the power of truth to overcome error, that which does not believe that God is a power that heals disease or reforms sin. The Spirit goes far, far beyond such things. And so, there are those who are better equipped to deal with a science of mind, a science of thought, than those who are able to transcend thought and let Spirit itself, or the descent of the Holy Ghost, be the presence and the power unto their experience. Now, mark this, though. There is definitely nothing wrong with any of the mental sciences that were founded by men of integrity. The only fault that is to be found with any of them are those that have been founded by men who definitely have never had a contact with a mental science until the day that they decided to become an author. So that even in the choice of mental sciences, one would do well to pray to be led to those who had their foundations in deep, deep integrity. All right. When it comes to the infinite way, you have another, call it phase or facet, to consider, and that is this. You will soon learn that you are under a self-imposed discipline to change whatever your former way of working, whatever your former method of practice, because the old way will not work with the new. I can illustrate that by telling you that this difficulty that I'm experiencing began with an illness in Johannesburg. And sudden, right out of the clear blue sky, I just keeled over. And 3 of our students came to help me. and one of them has been very, very successful as an infinite way practitioner. Now, this lady, seeing the great distress in which I was at the moment, went into the next room and sat down, and was enabled almost instantly to feel an inner peace, so that instead of giving me a treatment, she was able to turn within and let God give the treatment. And God said to her, "We wrestle not with principalities or powers, but spiritual wickedness in high places," and I had an instantaneous healing. What instantaneous? Within 15 minutes I was sitting up joking. Now, you see, that cannot be accomplished, that type of treatment, by a person who has been accustomed to mentalizing, to giving mental treatments, to declaring truths, to affirming truths, to stating truths, until they have overcome that habit of thought, that habit of treatment, to where instead of giving a treatment, they receive the treatment from God. It's a reverse process. Now, it is in the same way that our work becomes difficult when I say this to you, that the infinite way reverses your whole attitude toward life. How? Perhaps, if you haven't studied the books long enough or diligently enough, perhaps you believe that there is a law of good that can operate for you, a law of God. Or perhaps you believe that there is a law of evil that sometimes can operate upon you. And in either case, I say to you, you are wrong. There is no law of God can operate upon you for good. There is no law of evil that can operate upon you for evil. Why? You are the only law there is. You are the law that operates upon your world. There is no law external to you, neither a law of God nor a law of devil. Why is this true? In the whole of the infinite way picture, God is infinite. And if God is infinite, there can only be one law. And if that law is infinite, there is no you for it to operate on. You must be the infinity of that law. There is not duality. There is not law and you. There is law, infinite law, operating as your very individual life and being. Do you see the reversal of that process from where you sit here and maybe let a law of evil hit you one day and a law of God benefit you another day, or where you sit here and say, no, I am the law. I am master of my fate, captain of my soul. I, the God being of me, is the law unto my being, unto my body, unto my business, unto my practice, unto my student body. There may be short periods in our experience when we won't demonstrate that too well, but the fact is that whether or not at the moment we are demonstrating it, this is the truth of being. There is no law operating upon me from without my own being. There is only the law which I am. And unfortunately, God says, sometimes I create good and sometimes I create evil, and it's true. When I disobey or bring myself in disobedience to that infinite law of love, which is my true being, I must expect the same shock to hit back at me as if I hook up electricity incorrectly. I dare never blame another for my woes in the infinite way. Heretofore we may have said, it's my nation's fault I'm in trouble, my wife's fault I'm in trouble, my husband's fault, my neighbor's fault. Not in the infinite way. Acknowledge once and for all whatever inharmonies or discords are in your path are there as an erroneous state of consciousness which you have not yet overcome, and then you will find that you are loving your neighbor as your neighbor deserves to be loved. When you violate that and start to believe that your neighbor is responsible for your troubles, you are letting yourself open for all the malpractice that ever will hit you, and that is self-malpractice. Now, you see then that if this is true, the place whereon I stand is holy ground. I don't have to move out into a church. I don't have to move into a holy mountain. I don't have to move into another country or a better climate. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. If I make my bed in hell, God is there. If I make my bed in heaven, God is there. If I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, God is there. And what does all this sum up to? Where I am, God is. Whether at this moment I'm in heaven or in hell. Never forget that. Don't think that by moving some other place that you're going to avoid anything that you're going through. Never believe for a moment that by getting rid of a person or getting rid of a place or getting rid of a circumstance. No. Stand ye still and see the salvation of the Lord right where you are. Why is this? Now here's the answer. I and my Father are one. All that God is, I am. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Where? Right where you are. In heaven, in hell, or in the valley of the shadow of death. Now then, does that mean that a human being is God? Definitely not, because the human being is told, you must die daily. So what happens? This. The moment I recognize God as the reality of my being, the law, the life, the substance, the cause, I ask myself, since I can't look in the mirror and see God, where do I look for God? Answers come back from all over the mystical literature of the world. The Master says the kingdom of God is within you. Paul says, Christ in me, the hope of glory. The poet says, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Where is closer than breathing? Right within our own being, isn't it? So that if I now want really and truly to know God, to come face to face with God, to let God speak unto me, to let God govern me, there is only one way left. Be still and listen. Be still. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Keep that inner ear open. Do you have ears and do not hear? And in the stillness, in the peace, in the quietness, when your attention is turned to that withinness, you will find that God is in the very center of your being and talks to you and gives the treatments for you which you yourself never will know enough to be able to give intelligently. The wisdom of God is foolishness with man, but the wisdom of man is equally foolishness with God. And so let us not be people who believe that we know how to give a good treatment. We know not how to go out or how to come in. We do not know how to pray, Scripture tells us. We must let the Spirit bear witness with our spirit. We must let the Spirit make intercession for us, not the brain, not the thought, not the stirred up memories of what lies in certain books. No, we must empty ourselves as the Master did. I can of my own self do nothing. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. The Father doeth the works. Then, the Father being within, we learn to get still. We learn to get still 20 times a day until that contact is made that enables us to receive impartations from within our own soul. Not that we be taught of men, but that we be taught of God. When you understand the Infinite Way writings, you will see that they're not trying to teach you anything. They're trying to lead you back to the center of your being where you can be taught of God. That is the whole function of this new book, Practicing the Presence. Practice the presence 20 times a day until God speaks to you as intimately as God spoke to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, as intimately as God must have spoken to Jesus Christ, as intimately as Christ must have talked to Paul. So intimately must you be in tune with your own inner being. Then when you receive your guidance from within, you can make no mistake. You see, we do not come to this truth to be benefited. Only beginners do that. We come to this truth to be the light of the world, to benefit the world. I have here probably I will find it later. A letter that just came this morning from England. And a student came to me and told me of two relatives who were in concentration camps in Russia. And prisoners there ever since the war. And seemingly without hope of release. And the question asked was, what would I do about it? And the answer was, I would pray. How? By being still and letting the presence express itself, voice itself, announce itself. That's all. It may not say anything, but as long as I could feel that the presence of God was within me, I know God is on the field, just as much up in Russia as here. And so this letter is to announce that the two ladies have been released and sent to their home in Riga. Now, also it says they are the first two from the camp to be released. Did anyone do anything about that? Was that a good treatment? No. That was a realization of God's presence. That was bringing God to the scene. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Did you know that? Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And the only place there is freedom is where there's no Spirit of the Lord. I mean, where there's only place where there's imprisonment, the only place where there's punishment, the only place where there's confinement, is where there is no Spirit of the Lord. Now then, to every situation, physical, mental, moral, financial, what do? You bring the Spirit of the Lord and then find liberty. The Spirit of the Lord, it makes free. You don't, I don't. Not mental cleverness. That doesn't do it. Good treatments don't do it. What you know of truth will never do it. What I know of truth will never do it. But one moment of divine inspiration in which the Spirit of God flows will set a whole city free, will set a whole nation free. Now then, on January 12th, I had only been home 3 weeks from a 35,000-mile trip around the world, when God gave me this message and told me to start right out again. And this time I'm finishing a 40,000-mile trip. And the function of this trip is this. We now have a prayer group praying around the clock. Not merely around the world, but around the clock. There is not a single hour of the 24 when there aren't from 1 to 50 groups praying at the same time. But all through the 24 hours of the day and night, depending on where you look at your time, and not praying for peace, and not praying for liberty, and not praying for justice, realizing the Spirit of God here and now, dispelling the illusions of sense. And that's one reason why you are in this room. Those who partake in the practitioner groups are those who have been asked to participate in this program and give us 3 periods a day. 3, not 1, not 2, but 3, and 7 days a week, so that our work go completely around the clock. As fast as you stop, somebody in Australia picks it up, and when they stop, there's somebody in Hawaii, and when they stop, there's somebody in California, and the Mountain Time, and the Eastern Time, and the London Time, and it never stops. And what is the prayer? It isn't for anybody or for anything. It's the prayer of silence until the Spirit of God is realized. When the Spirit of God is realized, then declare, this Spirit of God realized. Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to give you the program. The first meditation should be for no other purpose than the realizing of the presence. That is, you sit in the silence in the attitude of, speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. You listen, you are receptive. And then comes that assurance that I am on the field, and you have completed your first meditation for us. Nothing more is asked of you than that. The second one is attaining the same meditation, attaining that same realization of the Christ, and then realizing that this realized Christ is dispelling material sense, even good material sense. But material sense, dispelling material sense. Wherever it is on this earth, it makes a difference whether it's Russia, South Africa, the southern part of the United States, England, Cyprus. Who cares? We are not dealing with personalities. We are not taking sides as to right or wrong. We are not trying to be good patriots and defend our country against some other country. We are spiritual students who are trying to realize Christ in order that the world be set free from material sense. Whether it's the world of Russia or the world of South Africa, whether it's the world of Cyprus or the world of the United States, who cares where or what? We are fellow citizens of the household of God. We have acknowledged all men to be our brothers. We have had no favorites. We have acknowledged God as the Father and all men as the brotherhood. Therefore, our second realization is that this realization of the Christ is dispelling material sense. Now the third one is the same. It is a realization of the Christ, and then the realization that this realization of the Christ is opening human consciousness to truth. You see, when material sense is destroyed, consciousness is ready for the inflow of love, of a government by love. Not only by money, not only by politics, but by love. That's the kingdom of heaven on earth, isn't it? Now the kingdom of heaven on earth is never going to come until Christ, the Spirit of God, so fills the earth that there is no room for material sense. And here is the lesson of the infinite way. It isn't God or Christ that heals. It isn't God or Christ that reforms. It isn't God or Christ that saves the world. It is God or Christ realized. This whole room can be full of God and Christ, and we can all drop dead. This whole room can be full of God and Christ, and bombs can fall and wipe us all out. But let one of us sit in this room and have a realization of Christ or God, and we set the whole room free. There was just as much God in Russia when those people were prisoners, but the realized Christ set them free. Now, remember that since this program was begun on the 12th of January, it has been announced that all concentration camps in Russia ought to be closed. Don't forget that. Don't forget that other important things have been announced in the world as changes of policy. And don't you ever forget this, that as the days and weeks and months go on, and you individually realize Christ dispelling material sense, realize Christ opening consciousness to the inflow of truth, you are going to witness in your bodies, in your business, in your homes, in your communities, and all the way thousands of miles away, the leavening influence of Christ realized. The one mistake that has been made in religion that has kept the world from the kingdom of Christ on earth has been that it has been taught that you could sit in a home or a church and pray up to God somewhere and have something happen, and even for 2,000 years that it didn't happen, they still kept sitting around waiting for it to happen. And they didn't know that it isn't God that can be prayed to or influenced. It is God that must be brought into experience. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And if you haven't got the Spirit of the Lord present, you just have no liberty. Now, sitting praying to a God for something is going to get you nowhere. But having the presence of God is going to free not only you, but your patients, your students, and ultimately your whole world. And there is the entire secret of the infinite way. God realized, Christ realized, and that is why meditation is the foundational point of our work, because only through meditation can you bring this release into. You can't bring God on the scene with mental abracadabra. You can't bring God on the scene by praying to God to come down to earth. You can't do it by lifting up your eyes. You can't do it by imploring. You can't do it by begging or pleading. You can do it only one way, if you can get still enough to let it escape. Browning gave us the secret. Truth is within ourselves. We must open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape. Not try to open out a way for it to come into us. It can't come in. It's bottled up in us now. The whole of the Christhood is bottled up in individual you and me. And that's why we have to let it escape. And incidentally, too, that is why the world is kept in poverty. I don't know why people will not believe Scripture or accept it seriously. There is no excuse for people remaining in poverty very long, except the few who are so overcome with sickness that they have more than they can do to get out of trouble. But otherwise, there's no excuse for poverty. Why? Because every individual has all the wealth of all the Indies within his own being. Why isn't he demonstrating it? Because he's sitting waiting for supply to come to him, and it won't come. He's got to open out a way and let it pour out from him instead of to him. Supply won't come to anybody, because whatever supply is out there doesn't belong to anybody. The only supply that belongs to you and me is the supply that is in here. And it's your supply, it isn't somebody else's. It is like integrity. What do you want, to borrow somebody else's integrity? You can't do it. You either have your own or you have none. And so it is with supply. You can't borrow your neighbor's. You either have your own supply or you have none. Where do we get that from? Scripture. Cast thy bread upon the waters. Whose bread? Thy bread. Where are you going to get it from? You have to ask yourself that. It's within you. How you're going to release it, how you're going to open out a way to let it flow. But you're never going to know the true sense of supply while you're waiting for it to come in, while you're praying for it to come in, while you believe you earn it or deserve it or are worthy of it or have a God that ought to give it to you. Because none of those things are true. God gave you the infinity of your supply on the same day he gave you your integrity. Now, if you're not using your integrity, you have another chance to turn over a new leaf and begin. And if you're not using your supply, you have another chance to turn over a new leaf and begin. But you begin not by taking in supply, but by letting it out, by casting your bread upon the waters, and then watching that same bread come back to you with butter on it, or jam, or sugar, or marmalade, or whatever the things you like best. But if you don't let forth that bread from within yourself, don't expect it to come back, because it isn't coming back. No, you see, the infinite way reverses the whole of the human picture. The whole of the human picture. It doesn't allow you to sit back in your chair and expect anything. Not even gratitude from anybody. Not even love from anybody. Not even compensation from anybody. It says that you are the one who must put it out into this world if you hope to experience it. It takes your attention away from this world, and it says, God is my source. I look to the Father within me, because he has said, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. The whole kingdom, my whole kingdom, is within you. All that I have is thine. Just begin to share it. Do you remember the widow? Remember the widow? What have you in the house? Oh, a few drops of oil. All right, begin to pour the few drops of oil, and the cruse of oil never ran dry. And do you remember the master? Master, we have only a few loaves and fishes, but a whole multitude to be fed. All right, break. Break the few that you've got. Let's begin. Not go out and seek more. Break the few that you've got. Cast them on the water, spread them, begin to share them, put them out. And so you're going to find it too. When you stop praying for yourself and use your whole time and effort to realizing the Christ for the benefit of your family, your friends, your enemies, the world at large, you will find that your own good will be a reflex action of the good that you have, the bread that you have put upon the waters. It has been customary in metaphysical thought to say, oh, you must be grateful for this, or you must show appreciation for this. No, it isn't so. It isn't so. I have to be grateful, and I have to show appreciation, and I have to give. You don't have to do anything. You have to make your own life. And what you decide to do is strictly your affair. Why is this true? Because my good comes from my Father, not from you. And therefore it lies within me to let the fullness of what my Father gives me flow forth. And that's all I'm responsible for. Not your gratitude, just mine. I'm only responsible for the flow that I let out from me, not anything that comes to me. Anything comes to me must be the reflex action of what is pouring out from me. And believe me, if it isn't pouring out from me, it isn't coming to me. Well, do you see what makes the infinite way a difficult one? One of discipline? It is the fact that we no longer can blame our troubles on God or our neighbors or our marriages. We blame our troubles on our own inability to discern and live the truth. And then we begin to make our correction within ourselves. When we do that, we have a very big job. Now, let us accept first that I and my Father are one right here where I am. This very place wherein I stand is holy ground. And right here embodied within me is all that the Father hath. He has incorporated himself in me. So that, watch this now carefully, there is only one legitimate demonstration in the infinite way. You cannot demonstrate person, place, or thing. You can only demonstrate the Spirit of the Lord. When you have that, it appears externally as health, supply, harmony, freedom, peace, joy, power, dominion, all the things that heretofore we have been trying to demonstrate and failed. Now, the substance of this cover is leather. So our first concern in demonstration shouldn't be a cover, it should be leather. If we have leather, then we can have a cover. On the other hand, if we don't want a cover, we can have something else out of leather. A pair of slippers if we like. But let us have the leather, and then we can have 100 other things. Good. Our substance is God. The substance of all form is God. So let us not try to demonstrate a person, a thing, or a condition, but let us demonstrate always the Spirit of the Lord, the presence of God, the realization of Christ, call it any term you like. Then let it take form. And if our need is transportation, it will be there. If our need is dollars or pounds, it will be there. If our need is a home, it will be there. If our need is customers, they will be there. If our need is a student body, it will be there. But we must never try to demonstrate them. We must try to demonstrate only that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And keep on demonstrating the Spirit of the Lord, the presence of the Christ, the realization of God's presence. That is the meaning of the Master's great teaching. Take no thought for your life. What you shall eat, what you shall drink, wherewithal you shall be clothed. Your Heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of these things, so why should you take thought for them? Seek ye the realization of God. Seek ye this consciousness of the Spirit of the Lord. And then you will see that the Spirit of the Lord will take form. And that form each day will be those very things which we seem to require in the human picture. You see, there is no separation between spirit and the things of the earth. The Word becomes flesh. And when you have need of a loaf of bread, pray, take no thought for a loaf of bread. Just take thought for the Spirit of the Lord and watch how quickly it will appear as a loaf of bread. We are not concerned with the form of our good. We are concerned with demonstrating the substance of our good. Then when we have the substance, it appears as form. I've never seen the righteous begging bread. I can assure you that it is an impossibility to tabernacle with God 20 times a day and experience lack or limitation in any form for very long. Now, every business person learns that one of the greatest secrets of success is in an intangible word, service or goodwill. More money, real iron-hard money, has been earned by service and goodwill than has ever been earned by things. More successes are achieved with service and goodwill than is ever achieved with diamonds. So it is with this. The only success that we can ever know, real success, is in proportion as we can demonstrate an actual realized Christ, the Spirit of the Lord. And so it is that I'm going to give you as a class gift that very passage where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And don't expect to find it any other place, because you'll be disappointed. Only where the Spirit of the Lord is there liberty. And that liberty will take the form of freedom, mental freedom, moral freedom, physical freedom, financial freedom, political freedom, any kind of freedom. But only be sure of this, where the Spirit of the Lord is. Do you see that? That's where it is. That's where harmony is. That's where peace is. That's where people can come together in goodwill. Where the Spirit of the Lord is. Take the Spirit of the Lord away from people, and when they come together, they either battle or rob each other. But that can't happen where the Spirit of the Lord is. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And I think that's our lesson for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.